AJ, is there an optimal balance between live fire and dry fire?
Oh, that's, I think there is. I don't know that I have found it yet. So it's something
Hmm.
I'm also seeking as well. I used to be the guy that would dry fire an hour a night. I thought, because I read it in books and people had told me, like, hey, dry fire is the way, and that's great and all. But
Mhm.
I quickly, I don't say quickly, I very slowly learned that, like, having these humongous long marathon sessions of an hour to 2 hours a night actually wasn't conducive to the best, kind of the best results. Because a lot of times you don't get an opportunity to really validate your work if all of your work is always in dry fire and there's not
Mhm.
enough live fire practice, to, again, to kind of validate those habits or to invalidate those habits. A lot of times you think, oh man, this is working great in dry fire. This is awesome. And then as soon as you put it on the clock or, put it to the test in live fire, you're like, wait just a minute. Yeah, I've not been doing this correctly in dry fire because it's not showing up, as a habit, or not showing up well,
Mhm.
as a progression in live fire. So I do think there is an optimal balance. I think for many people, time is of course everything, right? And availability. So it's just like people that make every excuse to not go to the gym and work out. They're like, they start January 1 every year. We see it. The gyms
Mhm.
are filled with people with New Year's resolutions. And then you wait about 3 weeks to a month, and all of a sudden it's back down to the regulars again. And,
Mhm.
and shooting is kind of the same way. Like, somebody buys the gun and they go take a class, or they really show a genuine interest in wanting to improve, and they go all in on one thing. We see this with, like, with great dry fire tools like Cool Fire Trainer or the Mantis or things like
Mhm.
that. And I think those tools are great for building, like for giving people a want or a desire to improve, but at the same time they're relying on that one tool to kind of lead them the way, because it's hard for them to get to the gym or get to the range to validate the stuff that they're doing in dry fire. If they're only allowing kind of that third party information from a phone or from a tablet, and the feedback they get from that to kind of be their, hey, I'm improving. And then when they go to the range, they realize, like, wait a minute, the gun still moves
Mhm.
around a lot more than it does in dry fire when I'm live firing. And whoa, I
Mhm.
wasn't ready, I wasn't ready for this level of recoil, or any
Mhm.
certain aspect of it. Things are different. So I definitely think I don't want to say you can overdo it in dry fire, but you can overdo it in dry fire. You can get things like tendonitis. You can unfortunately develop bad habits that sometimes,
Mhm.
again, third party software doesn't tell you the whole story. It'll tell you
I
good
was
or bad.
gonna ask you that. What if you myelinate something in dry fire that you shouldn't be myelinating? So, maybe you
Right.
don't know the
Based
answer to this, but I'm just asking it. How
on
much myelination then does it take to then overcome that to the correct neural pathways? Do you know what I'm
so
saying?
generally, whatever you myelinate is going to take at least 2.5 to 3 times that amount
Really?
to build a stronger pathway to overcome that old habit. That's why old habits
Wow.
are hard. That's why they're so hard to break.
Yeah.
So this is where I think, like, if folks could even get to the range once a week, right? If you can dry fire 4 to 5 times a week, and you can get to the range to validate your dry fire, with some live fire. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Like, your dry fire doesn't have to be, or your live
Mhm.
fire doesn't need to be 500 rounds a week or anything like that. If you could, but regimenting your practice, knowing what you're going to go work on in live fire
Mhm.
is just as important as knowing what you're planning on working on in dry fire every time too. But I think there is a balance to those things. As I've gotten more advanced and, kind of more skilled along the way, my my dry fire has kind, I don't want to say fallen off, but it's kind of peaked off a little bit now, to where I'll pick up the pistol generally 3 times to 4 times a week, and dry fire in some respect. And I've got a regiment of different things that I work on. Like, one day I work on vision skills or transitions. One day I'll work on gun handling skills. So, draws and reloads and things like that. Another day I'll work on movement, position things, footwork and stuff like that. And there's another time that I'll work on, kind of just like good old fashioned, kind of the old way of dry firing, the old penny on top of the sights. I don't put the penny on top of the sights, but we're just, where you're just really working on and understanding how to press the trigger and how to grip the gun without disturbing the sights at all, and minimizing that movement or completely evaporating that movement from the pistol or as much as I can. And so I work on those things in small segments, and in full isolation to those things. And I think that's very important. So instead of
With
having
thoughtfulness and purpose.
100%,
Yes,
you
that's
go
the
in
key.
like, I'm going to do a 45-minute dry fire routine and I'm going to work on this many aspects of my shooting. You're doing it wrong. I would much rather
Right.
somebody take two things that they're going to work on that are pretty well related to each other. And I would encourage them to work on that for a very dedicated and very focused 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes tops. And then go to the range at the end of the week, go on a Saturday or Sunday if you can get an opportunity to go to the range and think about everything that you've worked on in your dry fire and just validate those particular things in your live fire. You don't have to do dry fire. You don't have to dry fire, every single day, day in and day out, and one shot draw and fire, and then go to the range and like, okay, I've got 200 rounds to work with today. I'm going to work on draws the entire time. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, that would
And you can't get anywhere
that
with
would
that.
burn me out.